We will now continue with the question and answer session. Our first question actually comes from Cuba. Go ahead, please. Okay, we're still waiting for the question from Cuba. In the meantime, you may want to comment on...
Sure. Well, when we left the last segment, we were talking about the phenomenon of leapfrogging. You know, advanced developed countries have invested huge amounts of money and time in developing communication infrastructure, fiber optics, cable, copper. Latin America in particular and the rest of the developing world have a great opportunity to skip all of that, save those many billions of dollars, and go straight to the wireless technologies that I was just talking about in that last segment.
Great, thank you. I think we have Cuba on the line now. Go ahead, please.
Everyone, our question is quite simple. What are the projected costs for 3G phones? Thank you very much.
Well, the costs are, of course, higher than first and second generation phones because there's more chipsets and more technology in the phone. But a 3G phone in the United States now can be purchased for $50 or $80 and sometimes even provided free with a calling plan. In many parts of the world, companies are offering 2.5G, which might have all the capability of a full-fledged 3G phone, or slightly less sophisticated versions of those 3G phones at a discount price.
Okay, our next question actually is faxed in from Santo Domingo, and I will read that question. Will wireless technologies be able to overcome the false image that cable-based communications are more reliable and higher quality?
Yeah, I hope so, because there certainly is no difference in quality. You know, most times when you place a long-distance phone, it's as likely to go by satellite as it is to go by, say, cable or fiber optics. That's also true of most of the flow on the Internet. A lot of that is now wireless-based through satellite communication. In fact, there probably is a misperception because it's just the reverse. As we know, earthquakes, hurricanes, terrorism, vandalism, natural disaster can disrupt terrestrial systems, but tend to have less effect on wireless systems.
That's true. In fact, we are seeing that in emergencies.
Indeed.
Our next question is coming from Panama. How effective are 3G phones for video streaming, video conference programs like the ITC program?
Yeah, well, they're more and more effective is the answer to that. As you have more pixels in your phone, as the technology improves, you get a big increase. There are many 3G phones now where you can watch television, you can access your computer. So the future will hold that there will be virtually no difference between getting something on your wireless handset or your smart handheld computer or your phone, whatever you want to call it, and your conventional television or desktop computer.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. Our next question is coming from Chihuahua, Mexico. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm calling from the Autonomous University of Chihuahua. My question is, what could the universities do to establish contacts or agreements with these new technologies companies such that students might have access to this technology at a more cost-effective price?
I think many of the companies or the providers of this technology would be interested in providing plans for students that would give them, introduce them to the technology and hopefully connect them with the technology so that they would use it in the future.
Yeah, see, investing for companies, universities are a great investment because the college students of today, of course, are the business leaders of tomorrow. And if you get students used to using a technology, there's your built-in market. Plus, there's another reason why it might be useful to give it to colleges at a discount price, and that is you basically get to beta test your systems, especially if the students are willing, as a quid pro quo, to fill out a questionnaire or take a survey on what are the benefits and what are the glitches in these technologies. So those are great partnerships and should be encouraged.
Great. Sounds good. We go to Puebla, Mexico for our next question. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm calling from the Instituto Tecnológico Superior de la Sierra Norte de Puebla. My question is, why currently is there greater access to information and at the same time knowledge content seems to be less?
Well, there is a great difference between information and meaning. Meaningfulness in life comes from inner wisdom, spiritual centeredness, a great repertoire of knowledge. Data without the ability to make sense of it, to apply it in a society and in a humane fashion is almost irrelevant. It's almost just noise. We don't lack information in our society. We lack often the judgment to use that information wisely.
So true. Any comment on your side?
This, I think, is where higher education still remains valid. There are some authors that say everyone can, with access to all this information, they will no longer need to be educated. But I think that the guidance and the analytical skills and so forth that come with education are still going to be critically important.
Which is why cases are still used in business schools, because you want the people to develop those analytical qualities that don't come with an endless flood of information. In fact, information can almost get in the way sometimes because information is no longer a scarce commodity. At one time, every book in your house was valuable. Now, we almost get more pleasure from filling our trash bin, whether it's our real trash bin or our virtual trash bin with memos than we do from reading them or receiving them in the first place.
Exactly, the difference between information and knowledge. We go to Chihuahua for our next question. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. We're calling from the School of Economy in Parral, Chihuahua. What criteria should be used to select the best technology for each individual or corporate user?
I think the answer is to get started. The technology, the technology of tomorrow will be better than the technology of today. You need to pick today's, what seems to be most appropriate technology and begin using it, knowing that that's going to be enhanced and improved in the future and there will be better technologies. But don't wait for the perfect technology.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I think in the long term, you want to use technologies that have high bandwidth, high security, high clarity, so you don't lose the phone call, you don't lose the computer connection. Right here in San Diego, Qualcomm Corporation has developed CDMA technology, which is currently the world leader, used by Vivo in Brazil and other companies throughout the world. But it is currently probably the best technology because it provides the criteria of clarity, security, bandwidth that's necessary for 3G applications.
Okay, we go to Mexico City for our next question, and this was faxed into us, and here is a question. I understand China is now the largest market in the world for 3G phones. Does culture play a role in the adoption of this type of personalized communication?
Well, sure. Culture, government, stage of development. There have been some problems in China with new technologies because the government realizes this may be a force that they have little control over. The Internet, as Larry was saying earlier, might be intended for one purpose and people might use it for a completely different purpose that their government does not like. So that is always an issue. And it has, one of the things we know about any new innovation is it has to be compatible with certain cultural and ethnic traditions of that particular culture. If it's not compatible, it's probably not going to get adopted.
So are there cultures that are more oral and less written?
Sure, absolutely. Mm-hmm. One of the real issues for Africa is that it has a great oral tradition, but print is a relatively new thing for most African countries, less than 100 years old. So, yeah, that does become an issue in many parts of the world.
Great.
I think also in China, the importance of guanxi, or your network, personal network, and connection with people is very important to doing business and to life in general. And so the Chinese, this is a very much way of being connected to everyone else.
Great. And language, Fred, has a lot to do with it, too. The Japanese were slow to adopt the Internet because kanji is not as easy to use online as, say, English or Espanol. So they were a little bit slower, which is an anomaly for Japan because most technologies have been adopted very quickly by Japan.
That's true. We remain in Mexico for our next question. Go ahead, please.
The question is the following. How much do you think that economic and social policies in developing countries influence having access to these kinds of technologies?
Well, government policy is always a huge issue. First of all, it's very important that the government not censor communication, and that's a struggle in every country. It's a struggle here in the United States at times. It's a struggle in many countries in Latin America and throughout the world. The free flow of information is necessary for the maximum intellectual and business development of a society. The other thing is they have to provide a regulatory structure which is neither too restrictive so that it stifles innovation and competition, but still provides a framework. So, for example, people aren't all making phone calls on the same frequency.
We've also seen the deregulation process here in the United States, for example, in the telecommunication industry, where telecom companies were deregulated, and now they're coming back together again. Mm-hmm. Next question is, do the professional standards for distance activity and network collaboration created by the ITC include English language proficiency?
Yes, I believe they do. And again, you can access the website or call us on the telephone to get more information on that.
Okay, so we need to be conversant in English to be able to take those programs and courses.
Sí, español y inglés también.
Very good. And going back to telecommunication regulations and deregulation, in what policy environment are we today in the United States?
Well, I think we are in an environment that is continuing to foster technological development, but there are occasional dark clouds on the horizon. The Decency Act that was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court in the late 90s would have controlled lots of programming and websites on the Internet and was ruled unconstitutional. It's always an issue because, of course, in any medium there's lots of information that people object to because of political reasons or because they perceive it to be obscene or pornographic or whatever. So it's always a balance between do you control it a little bit or do you control it too much?
True.
I think that's true. We're as we evolve, as we see how the technologies develop, the regulatory agencies will try to find the right balance between enough control but not too much.